David Goss and Tom Bogert with you here on Soccer Wise. Let's get started with Cincinnati, Tom. We've been waiting to do this preview segment. We've got Kevin Wallace coming up in just a moment to chat about this team. He's been waiting longer than us as we've been messaging, and it's been the Lucho stuff once again. It is finally done. How do you feel about how it's all gone down and where Cincinnati stands?
I love it. Look, it was clear that the relationship between Lucho Costa and this team had to be done. Both sides, I think, tried to keep it going or leaving open the possibility. And then, I don't know, after his fifth different interview at saying that he wants to leave or saying why he's being pushed out or whatever, there's just no road back. So I love that for Dallas that they were able to get him. What delayed this is Estudiantes made a bid. Well, guess what? They don't have any money. So that slowed things down. So that's why nothing was signed there. So it was drawn out more than I think everybody would have wanted it to be. But at the end, everybody got the result they wanted, which includes FC Cincinnati getting Evander. So Lucho Costa is a former MLS MVP and an MVP finalist, I believe, last year, or was at least in the mix. Evander isn't an MLS MVP yet, but he's absolutely in that conversation for one of the best players in the league, somebody who can go thermonuclear at any given time and carry a team. I think Evander's going to fit even better with Cincinnati because he can do all of his heliocentric stuff, and they have the defensive structure behind him that's better than what Portland had. Again, with these three center backs, I'm honestly like around 35 to 40 goal contributions is not a crazy number for Evander. I forget exactly what he had last year, but it wasn't far off. With Kevin Denke,
I think he was at 30 last year.
Was he? Okay, so maybe 40 is probably a little bit of a stretch. 20 and 20.
Well, I can check. He was third, by the way, in voting for Major League Soccer last year. So, he has those credentials. He was at 34.
Okay, yeah. I'm expecting more this year. And again, that's pretty ridiculously unfair to this player. But I think he's going to be better in this system, or at least have more chances. He has Kevin Denke with him now, too. Again, briefly was a league record MLS transfer. Between Denke and Evander, it's like $28 million plus of two new attacking talents. This is the narrative around this team this winter has been Lucho Costa. Oh, Luca Oriano didn't show up either. And Yuya Kubo was the most surprising holdout of all time in soccer for preseason. Oh, why are they doing this? Oh, they need to sign a left back. There were a lot of fair questions. How is this going to get resolved? So the narrative has been questioning things. I think now you can take a step back and be like, this was one of the best off seasons in the league.
It is true what you are saying. I am then trying to counter that in where this team wants to stand. You can't really afford to have anything out of place. If you want to contend for a supporter shield again, you're chasing a team that set the points record last year. Getting a new DP in the door 6 days before the season starts isn't really the way to do that. If you want to contend in CONCACAF Champions Cup, getting the new DP in the door 3 days before your first game isn't normally the way to do that. Now, they've got more structure in place, and they are bringing in a more known quantity in MLS than maybe ever in Major League Soccer history for a move like this. And they have a really good track record of being able to maintain performances. So I think you're right from the moment Lucho said what he said after the last game of the season to 12 months later, they will stand at that exact point, which I think will be still in the playoffs rather than out. It has all gone really well. Where I sit right now today, I'm not as sold in where they're going to hit day one. You are though, right?
Yep. Yeah, this is my shield pick. I don't think that there's going to be a big ramp-up time for Evander. Denke, everything I've heard, he's been awesome. Just watching him in individual training, Pat Noonan came out and said, yeah, maybe we're a little bit behind where we want to be. And I think that was him just letting his frustration about Oriano and Acosta and everything else kind of boil over. We want all of this to be happening so we can be working with Denke and the players he's going to be playing with. Well, Lucho's out, Evander's in. Two really good attacking players, particularly the individualism that Evander has and the creative joy that he has. I don't think it's going to be very long for him and Kevin Denke to get on the same wavelength.
Yeah, and Denke's almost gone under the radar through this whole thing. A record transfer, 24 years old, entering his prime, coming off some huge seasons in Belgium and much needed for this group. So I'm excited to watch them play. I've said this a couple of times. Never been to TQL. It's one of the few I've never been to, and the atmosphere looks incredible. Obviously, I've heard about the March of the Match just once or twice, but I've never been a part of it. So I would love to see this team play deep into the season for us to get the chance to go to some big games there. And while Cincinnati was slightly melting down, Columbus was melting a little bit deeper. So that's a positive in Ohio for Cincinnati as well. All right, let's get into our segment here, previewing this team. Let's go to our conversation with Kevin. I guess we haven't talked about them much. I don't know if you've heard, but there is a Major League Soccer team located in Cincinnati, Ohio. They like to stay under the radar, super quiet, super casual. And it's finally time for us to talk about it because the dominoes have finally hit. So we've got Kevin Wallace, one of my favorites here from the Cincy PostCast. If you were listening here on SoccerWise, go listen to them. They do an awesome job covering, Kevin, what has become one of the most entertaining shows in MLS.
Look, this is, for some people, this may be flyover country. For me, this is the epicenter of MLS storylines. Has been for the last couple of years. 2025 is no different.
I was telling you before we got on here that I wouldn't throw away all the coping mechanisms you've learned. I would just hide them, put them to the side, put them in the attic for a couple weeks, or a couple years. What has the last few weeks been like in FC Cincinnati land?
It's been, a roller coaster is a cliche, but a cliche for a reason. This has been a very weird ending to the Lucho Acosta time here in Cincinnati. Is a club legend, won an MVP, captained the team to a shield. You had people this offseason talking about, is he the first statue? Is he the first name you retire in a Ring of Honor? This was a guy that was poised to be the face of FC Cincinnati, of soccer in this city, a sports legend in a town that has a lot of sports legends. And now people are asking themselves, is it okay to wear a Lucho Acosta kit to a game? Yeah. Like, the turnaround in vibes is weird, bizarre, and honestly, at this point, I think most fans who have been keeping track of this saga are happy to see him go.
I'm sure you know this off the top of your head, but May 28th, a team called FC Dallas goes to TQL Stadium. I think a lot of those questions are going to be answered around then. Yeah. I do wonder across all sports, maybe US, maybe global, the turnaround between newspaper article taken out, newspaper ad, and leaving the team, if he broke the record. Because many people, we've mentioned this a couple times on the overall SoccerWise show. But Lucho Acosta had a contract negotiation a year ago, took out a full-page ad when he signed saying, I am Cincinnati. This is where I live. I love this club. This is where I'm going to retire. Yeah. And now is going to be playing for a different MLS team about 12 months after that. Normally, we dig through the transfer window stuff. We get into our Doyleisms. Then we've got Weeby's over-underline. But this is just too juicy. And Kevin, we've been messaging about this for a while just because I was like, we can't do this until it's resolved. And it felt like it was never going to get resolved. We are at least a week out from the season, and it has finally finished. And you messaged me, said, okay, it's time to record. Let's go do this thing. That was the final domino that Tom didn't touch on, was we were waiting for the South American money to come through, for Evander to move, for Lucho to move, for a French player to move, to then finally record our podcast, was the big key. And what's incredible about this whole thing, I guess one of the 15 incredible things, is it overshadows the fact that FC Cincinnati broke the transfer record earlier this offseason. Like, this has not been the only story in Cincinnati. Kevin Denke, if you don't know, 24-year-old coming over from Belgium, broke the MLS transfer record at $20 million, I believe it was, when he signed. Since Atlanta has broken it again with Emmanuel Latte Loth, so you only get to do it for so long. That's the nature of MLS. But he was supposed to be the big offseason. That was the big ad. It was the replacement for Brandon Vasquez and Brenner and the failed Bupenza and all the other things in between to take this team into championship territory once again.
Yeah, and it was a funny moment, like, through the offseason, you have folks being like, oh, when's FC Cincinnati going to make a move? We're waiting for, something to happen here. Set aside the Lucha stuff. And you had to just keep reminding people, hey, the day after they were knocked out of the playoffs, they broke the MLS transfer record and brought in a striker that what looked like most of the rest of the league was shocked was a guy with a profile that was willing and able to come to MLS. Like, if Denke is about what we think he will be, he could be one of the best strikers to ever play in MLS. Like, that is the profile of player that he is. And he was brought on to be the almost literal cherry on top of the formation to take this team to trophies. And it was walking off of the field of that playoff loss where Lucha said, yeah, this is probably my last game in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Whoa. All right, man. Like, this was all built around you. And so, you know, Denke's coming into a team without its talisman. He said, Denke said in an interview, like, he saw the chances that the team was creating. He got to watch that last NYCFC playoff game. Yeah. And he's like, he saw everything that was there just without that killer striker up top. He was excited. He was excited to play with Lucho. And he won't.
Yeah.
It just won't be what happens here.
And it's credit to the club that they probably did. They may have spent an even higher number than they had to get the work done early to get him in preseason. I mean, they basically signed him before the January transfer window opened in a way that European clubs normally don't do. MLS teams will do this because the seasons are over and players are going to move and all of that. But normally European clubs are not saying, yeah. Like, they want the player for 3 more months and then they want to see what the open market looks like. So to blow a club out of the water to say, no, just sign right now, meant that they went really big on it. And it should be exciting. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the same resume as Cucho, but it's in the same ballpark of entering that time of your career, the position he plays, the different ways I think he can play it and affect the game. Coming from Belgium, a little different than coming off Watford, but like, not in totally different worlds. It just depends on who scouts you and what they see on any given day. And so there's a ton of excitement there. The other moves in the offseason have all been really strong. A U22 initiative defender in Gilberto Flores from Paraguay. A new left wing back to be the starter in Lucas Engel, coming on loan from Middlesbrough. And Luca Orejano signing a permanent deal. It was touch and go for a couple moments, but that was the reason I still had confidence in this team around the whole Lucho stuff. Was Orejano was an elite attacking piece last year, and whether it has to fill in at the 10, play as a second forward, play off the wing, whatever it is, you know you're going to get a really high level of production from him. And now we finally know that the final piece will be Evander in all of this. Evander pushing his way out of Portland. They become 2 of the first Cashfers or Cades or whatever we're going to choose to call it. I just want them all on the record in case history proves me right or wrong in either direction as we go forward. And I made the joke about the coping mechanisms because Evander kind of just did with what Lucho did. His relationship with the club is a little different, right? Lucho's been there longer. He's won an MVP. He's won a trophy. He took out the ad. Evander hadn't done any of that. But he had an MVP caliber season last year and then turned around and said, I can't be back here. I can't play here. He had a game in which he had 5 goal contributions against the Galaxy and didn't celebrate. And I thought it was because he was annoyed by how good he was. Turned out he didn't really want to play that day for Portland. And yet he still had 5 goal contributions. There's a lot of talk about him. We did our over-under show with Doyle and Tom talking about these teams. And I think their feeling was the club is better with Evander than Lucho. What do you make of this swap and sort of how long it might take?
Yeah, I've had the same thoughts that this team could be better, that Evander could be an upgrade in this position. Eastern Conference team, we don't get to watch a whole lot of Western Conference teams. Tried to watch highlights, go back and look at all the stats I can get, but he looks to be a better shooter on the ball. He doesn't seem to try as many little tricks as Lucha liked to call them, of just trying to take on guys 3v1 dribbling. There should be an upgrade there. Evander also will have the advantage of getting to play with Kevin Denke, a striker that Lucho Acosta did not have last year and hasn't had since maybe the combination of Brenner and Vasquez back in 2022, 23. Yeah. It certainly has the makings for an upgrade. Again, if he's bought in. If Evander starts doing the, hey, I want to go back to Brazil, hey, this isn't exactly what I signed up for, it could get messy. But I also think that even without Evander, that this roster is deep enough that they'll still be good. If say something weird goes wrong, right? Like, I think that this team with Yuya Kubo as a backup to literally everybody, now finally back in preseason, I think overall this team is in a much better position depth-wise than it was last year, which is going to help Evander more than Lucho had last year.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is now having a full-time left wing back to start the year, you have Orejano to be a little bit of a flexible piece. And that, I think, as you're saying, adds that depth of, okay, you can move things around, you can put people in some different roles, and then Kubo can fill in wherever you need to off all of that. I'm a big Dado Valenzuela fan. I'm not saying you're putting an MLS Cup game on his shoulders, but I'm excited to see him play even more this year. And so I think that should be exciting for this team. And I have a little bit of Corey Baird stock this year of just like it dropped so far. And now you have the options, which is the focus is never going to be on him. Can he just be that hard runner again? Can he stretch the field? Can he make hard near post runs? Can he pull some players around? And I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a couple numbers this year. For Evander 2 years ago, fitting into MLS, he had 9 goals and 5 assists. That was his badge year. And then last year he had 15 goals and 19 assists and was an MVP finalist. You saw the talent year one, 15 goal contributions basically. That's not even terrible. So if he's uninterested, if he's disengaged, or if it takes him a while to fit in, then he can still put up some numbers. And the reason I think for Cincinnati that they went in this direction and not overseas is the assumption that it will be a quicker transition because he understands the league. He understands the physicality. He understands the speed. And my only worry is the style. Just how much different Cincinnati is from Portland. And I think one of the things I think has gotten overlooked is, yes, Lucho was not a pressing maestro, but he had bought in. As a 10, he had bought into what was happening out of possession. Evander wasn't asked that in Portland, and Portland wasn't good because they couldn't defend. And so that's the only thing I need to see from Evander this year, and that's my only big worry. I do think defensively the team is better. They traded Owazium and Ian Murphy to Colorado to help cover some of the cap. I love Owazium. I think he's one of the best passing center backs in soccer or in MLS. He is not, though, the defensive stalwart. And so bringing Matt Miazga back for the full year, having Miles Robinson, having Teenage Hidebi, having Nobodo again, Buka, all of those pieces I think makes them really, really strong. The other moves to note on the way out for this team, besides Lucho Acosta being sold, Nico Gioacchini's loan ended. Yamil Assad does not have a deal right now. And if you remember his name, Alvaro Barrial, once again, loaned out from FC Cincinnati, signed probably another contract extension, and will be there forever. So the big question for this team is just how long it takes. Like how long, how much does this affect the club, the group internally, and then how long it takes to sort of get over it, or if there are any things that are broken. If your star player making a statement where he calls out your general manager and then leaves, if there's any lasting effect to the rest of the team. And I think it got sort of combined with the Luca Orejano and Kubo stuff, and then you see the list of names that Lucho put out there that have left. But myself and Tom on SoccerWise, if you didn't listen, when it came out, we went through those names. And we said all of these players overperformed their contracts and therefore had to leave because they weren't good. The LA Galaxy won MLS Cup and then sold their starting center forward and traded their youngest, best prospect moments after winning because that's the nature of the league and that's the salary cap monster.
Yeah. I mean, those guys that Acosta mentioned, like Barrial wanted to leave. He forced a move. Vasquez tripled his salary going to Mexico. Arias was outbid, or FC Cincinnati was outbid for Arias. He went back to Brazil, and Junior Moreno took a massive pay increase to go play in the Middle East. He ended up signing a supplemental deal last year with Houston. They didn't pick up his deal. So, like, I don't know. Like, all of those moves made perfect sense, and I'm sure it's annoying to, like, lose your boys or whatever, but like at the end of the day, the moves that were made corresponding, like Barrial left, Oreshana was brought in. Arias left, Yedlin was brought in. Like Moreno left, and Buka was brought in. Those were all perfectly good, adequate replacements, if not upgrades in certain places. So yeah, absolutely. It was a little ridiculous. I mean, Lucho changed his story just to go back to that for a second, he changed his story through the offseason. It was originally he wanted to go play and win championships, or he wanted to play with his friends, or he wanted to go back to Argentina. He wanted to go home.
Yeah.
He ends up in a place where, as far as I can tell, none of his friends are. He's further away from a championship, and he's not in Argentina. What happened? So the other addition, though, and I feel like I let you down because I didn't throw this in the notes, I think could be key to everything. Brian Anunga, signed from Nashville. FC Cincinnati has not had a backup defensive midfielder that wasn't Yuya Kubo, who is not a defensive midfielder, since like 2019. And he put in like 1,500 minutes for Nashville, a pretty good defensive team. Pavel Buka put up like the 4th most minutes in the league last year for a non-goalkeeper. He needs to take a break every once in a while. And if Anunga can keep him a little healthy, or at least a little more rested, this team will be off to the races. So just that little bit of depth there in the defensive part of the midfield is going to be key.
And Anunga let go by Nashville because he doesn't progress the ball, but he wins tackles and he covers ground. And Cincinnati don't need him to progress the ball because everyone else on the team will do that, as well as the style is just different. Nashville was playing against set defenses and blocks because they don't create chances, and Cincinnati's going to open up the game. So I think that's a really good ad. He's a player that I've been a fan of since the USL days, and this feels like the cleanest fit he's been in so far. Reminder for everyone, because every team is different and it's chaos. For cup competitions for Cincinnati as a good team last year, they are in CONCACAF Champions Cup. They will play against Motagua for a chance to face off against Tigres. So Tigres already won their opening round of CONCACAF Champions Cup. So that would be what's coming up for Cincinnati. And then on the Leagues Cup side of things, they will face off against Monterrey, Juarez, and Chivas. And then insanity will happen with standings. And then at some point we would find out if they moved on to the next round, who they'd play, where it would be, and all of that type of stuff. But those are a lot of big teams. I mean, Tigres and Monterrey, arguably the 2 highest spending teams in Mexico. Chivas, the biggest team in Mexico, and then in the U.S. From a fan base point of view. So those are some high profile, some big games. We've seen TQL bounce for some of those games. So I'm excited to watch this. CONCACAF Champions Cup probably feels like a step too far so quickly with all the moves that have been made. And Tigres, they are the giants in that, but you're not going to bet against this Cincinnati group and bet against a lot of the pieces in it. Let's go into our Doyleisms. We'll listen to that. We'll bounce off the back of that, and then we'll hit Andrew Weeby's over-under line.
Yeah, Cincinnati's are just clearly one of the top teams in the league based upon their overall talent, right? Like, all the focus is going to be on the addition of Kevin Denke up top and then Evander as the number 10. And I think both those guys will be upgrades. Evander's just a little bit more disciplined in his movement than Lucho Acosta has been, so I think that'll actually help. But it's the guys behind them, Pavel Bucha and Obina Nwodo in central midfield, and then that back line, Miazga and Miles Robinson, DeAndre, like, nobody in the league has invested as much in their defense as Cincinnati have. And we've seen that in the results over the past few years. Like, they went from the worst defensive team in the history of the sport to one of the best in MLS over the past few years. And if they stay healthy, they will probably be top 2 or 3 again this season. And that gives your star number 9 and your star number 10 and guys like Luca Orejano, gives them a chance to just go out there and ball out. And it works. We've seen it work at a really, really high level. And I know some of the faces are new and different, but I see no reason to think this is going to be anything but an excellent team in contention to win every trophy they play for.
So there it is from Matt Doyle. 1 year ago, if we did this show, coming off a Shield, we would have said trophies. That has to be the conversation. It sounds like Doyle is still there. Is that how you feel right now?
Yeah. Albright has said that this is a championship window for this team. The team recognizes that. And we've said all along on our side of things that this is trophy or bust. You got to come home with a piece of silverware. I don't care what it is. If I was picky, I'd say not the Supporter Shield. Give us something new. But I'll take anything, right? I will say this, though. I'm going to be annoying here to FC Cincinnati fans. Let me just very briefly lay out the case for why the wheels might fall off. Okay, everybody is praising this team. I know Tommy Scoops picked this team as his shield team. Let me just throw some things out there. Chris Albright has yet to bring in a good striker. All of the good strikers that have played for FC Cincinnati since 2022 were brought in by Gerard Nykamp. Bupenza and Gioacchini, not great. Baird, Santos, haven't lived up to expectations. You have Obina Wobodo took a step back last year, and if he takes another step back, he starts to enter liability territory. Another concern, Miazga, Hagelin, we're all excited about them. Both were injured last year. Both haven't featured in the preseason yet.
Yeah.
I don't know how healthy they are, and I don't know how good they will be coming back. They're not necessarily young guys. And Evander's a question mark. He has not had a season as good as Lucho Acosta did. If that's a downgrade, we've seen what this team looks like with a not interested Lucho Acosta. It's not great. So I think there is a path for the wheels to fall off, but I don't think they will. To be clear, I don't think they will. I had to play devil's advocate. Look, there was way too much optimism around this team from around the league. I had to put it out there. So if things go wrong, you can say I warned you.
I think that's fair. I would blunt some of it with, of the strikers you named, Bupenza's really the big one. Gioacchini was backs against the wall, had to make a move happen in that moment, and you were hoping to get anything out of it. Santos was a backup piece always. Whether he could have been more is debatable, but that was the idea. And then Baird, I think, a little bit. So I think some of that's fair, but I think for the most part, this is in a profile outside of just Bupenza that hasn't happened before. And so if your hit rate's 50%, then you're going to get this one right, and you didn't get the last one right, and that's where you sit right now. And I would say as well, this is a group that has done well at the center back position when they've been up against it, right? To bring in the guys they've brought in over the last few years on loan, late moves, all of that. So I wouldn't totally put Gilberto Flores out of the potential of having to play if he has to, it being bad. And also this front office being able to scramble and say, can we find a center back on loan for the rest of this European season until Matt Miazga is fully healthy and all of that going forward. So I think that's all fair. The Nwobodo conversation is going to be a big one. I think, as Doyle said, it feels like the structure in the spine makes his life easier once again, and he can start to do the things he does really well. And you wrote down for our rundown the strength of the attacking trident. If teams have to keep up with Denke, Evander, and Orejano being elite, that changes game states very often for a defensive side.
Yeah. No, I'm, to be clear, very hyped for this season. I don't know, maybe it's the Cincinnati fan in me.
Yeah.
We've seen this team spend a lot of money and then go and finish last place before. So I'm trying to brace myself for the worst here.
Let's go to the line from Andrew Wiebe, because I think it sets a lot of this. His line is goal differential for this team. He has it at 20.5 over or under in MLS. So the context is last year for Cincinnati, it was 10, plus 10 goal differential. On the Supporter Shield winning team, it was plus 18. LAFC last year, first in the West, but not a Shield winning team, 20, plus 20. And Miami and Columbus were plus 32 and plus 30 because they played insane soccer and were outliers and all that type of stuff. The question here is this a good team or is this a great team? And if it's over that line, it's a great team. It's a Shield contending team. It's a championship contending team. If it's under that line, like last year, they finished third in the East. It could still be very good. Like 2 years ago, it could still be very, very good under this line. What do you make of the line, and what do you think? Where do you think it falls?
I like the line. It's a good line. Wiebe does a good job with the lines. I'll tell you this. At the end of the year, every year, when the schedule drops for MLS, we go in and immediately pick every game, and we pick the score of every game. We did this before Lucho was gone. We did this before Evander was in. This is what we
Mike Francesa would love it.
This is we do not care about the externalities. It's vibes only as we look at the roster or look at the schedule. This is what we came up with plus 22 goal differential, a 65-point season. We're in the running for a Shield. Weirdly, not as high of a goal differential as I would have expected. Just, again, predicting on vibes, all of the scores of the game. So
now Lucho lost, Evander brought in. It stays around that line, even if it comes down by 1. You're still over 20.5, so you're taking it?
Yeah, I think the idea is that the defense should be better. Roman Celentano didn't look amazing at times last year, but also, and I'm ashamed I haven't got to mention this yet until now, the team literally did not start the same starting 11 once the entire season until the playoffs. That chaos for a goalkeeper trying to communicate and organize a backline was doing him no service. So I think the defense actually takes a step up from last year. The offense, if it can just hold pace with what they did last year, this will be a very good team.
Yeah, we've basically never seen Miles and Miazga play next to each other. Those are 2 MLS defenders of the year. And so to have neither, to never have them together, and Miles then dealing with international call-ups and all that type of stuff last year, not as consistent as you'd like. I think that should be a huge step. Also, Roman Celentano had a really clean catch in the jersey release video on the, what do you call it, streetcar? What's
the
it called?
Streetcar, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
So that's like really promising for 2025. And so I'm going to overinvest in that. I'm going to say below on this line, and I think they are a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. I just don't know. I just wonder how long it takes to hit. And I'm not quite sure the way the league plays out. We did our points over under. I just don't know that there's a lot of bad teams. And so I think there's just more close games. Even if you are better defensively, I don't know if it opens up as quickly as we think with the Denke and Evander fitting in and scoring 500 goals and all of that. Either way, they are probably the top of the list for must watch for non-Cincinnati fans in terms of like watchability and all that type of stuff. They are high up there on the like drama and experience thing as well. So FC Cincinnati is going to be one of the teams we are going to be talking about a ton on Soccer Wise. If you are new to us because you are here for your Cincinnati preview, we stream 3 times a week talking MLS and NWSL. Don't worry, we will talk about expansion a lot, and hopefully one day that is Cincinnati. Included in all of that, we put out 4 to 5 shows a week every single week. We've got 5 million coming out leading into the MLS season, so come and join us. If you are listening on SoccerWise and you have not listened before, go the other way. Listen to Cincy PostCast. You can listen to Kevin and his co-host talk all things FC Cincinnati and just read through schedules, which is like the best thing you could possibly listen to. So make sure to go over there. Kevin, I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and let's do it again soon.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you. This was a blast.